Good afternoon, brethren, and happy Sabbath. I hope that my message will live up to the promotion that it's received. Appreciate that. My last message on fool's gold was pretty well received, especially by the very young in the audience, and several of them came up afterwards and they wanted some of the nuggets of fool's gold, and I didn't have any use for it really, so I gave it out to whoever wanted it. But then they kept circling and they wanted the real gold also, and had to explain some things to them about that. Well, I've never been a real big exerciser in my life. Tried to do some things here or there, but never really systematic with that. But some people encouraged me to start running. Actually, some people in this room encouraged me. And so I did, and I ran a couple of short races with them last year. And that went well. And I figured I needed some ongoing motivation so I wouldn't lose my momentum and stop like often happens with exercises. So I joined a runners club in Carmel. And we have a weekly run, and then after the run, we go out for drinks and socializing and things like that. And on one of those sessions, I met a guy, we'll call him John, but he's also in the club. And I asked how he's doing, and he said, well, I just ran the Monumental Marathon, which is a 26-mile race in Indianapolis. And I thought that was pretty amazing because I could hardly imagine running that distance. And I have more respect for it now after having run a small distance, just how much it is to run the large distance. So I asked John, and I said, well, what's your story? How did you do that? And he told me his story. And the story is really interesting because he said he's only been running for 3 years. And he started out, he was 290 pounds, and he was totally sedentary. But he had some friends who encouraged him, and he started small. He started with walking, and he built up as he could, and he got down to a better weight, and he added miles, and this was the pinnacle of his goal and his aspirations, that he would actually run a marathon, and so he did. And I came away thinking from that, if somebody who's nearly a 300-pound couch potato can just run a marathon, then anybody can do anything. I mean, maybe not literally anything, but so many things that we and I think are impossible and look impossible on their face actually aren't. You know, this guy was a nerdy guy and just sat in front of the computer all day, and I actually sit in front of a computer all day too, but you know, he woke up one day and said, I want to run, I have this goal. He got inspired with some friends, and it took 3 years, but he actually did it. And the thing about it was he wasn't like super special. He wasn't a natural born athlete or anything like that. He was an average guy. And the only thing really special about him for me is that I happen to know him personally, and I didn't read about him on a website, but I actually sat and talked to him. And he's not even the most special. That isn't like such a super accomplishment that somebody 50 years old would decide to do something like that. There are other people who have done it at even later ages. This lady here is Iva Barr, and she ran a marathon at age 87. This gentleman is from Greece. His name is Dimitrion, and he ran a race in Athens, Greece. He was 98. But he's not the oldest marathon runner. The oldest marathon runner is Fauja Singh, and he ran the London Marathon at age 102. He didn't even start running until he was 89. Yeah. So it's amazing the things that you think are not possible, but actually are possible within your grasp if you change how you think. And that is something that the author of Hebrews talks about. In Hebrews 12:1, we have this verse. Therefore, we also, since we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnared us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. So Paul is comparing setting a goal with a race. And the goal that Paul is talking about is obviously the kingdom of God, the ultimate race that we're running. But Paul basically gives us a roadmap or a blueprint on how to set a goal and accomplish the goal. And so he gives us three components in this verse. The first component is having a goal, right? Run with endurance the race. But then he gives us a positive thing that can help us toward the goal, and he warns us about a negative thing that can help keep us from the goal. So the positive thing is this cloud of witnesses. And that's not courtroom witnesses or anything like that. We'll see a little bit more about those witnesses, but they are there to help us. And then the negative thing is the weight that so easily ensnares us, sin, or other things like that will keep us from accomplishing our goal. So for my friend John, that weight was a literal weight that kept him really from doing a lot of exercise at the beginning, and he overcame that weight. But for the author of Hebrews, that weight represents anything that is keeping us from whatever goal that we set. So Paul is talking about the process of change. And in order to change, the forces of change need to be greater than the forces of the status quo. They need to be greater than the forces that are keeping us where we are. So Paul gave us 3 points in these 3 components of this verse. And the first component is to set your goal, to identify the goal. Now, with the people that I've talked about, so John in the running club, and then those 3 older people who ran the marathon, really the common denominator that they had was not extraordinary physical condition. It was just that they set a challenging goal and they believed that they could reach it and they worked toward that goal. Now, some of them genetically, they did have some advantage just being able to live to 102, but that doesn't mean that you're a natural runner. So it wasn't that. It wasn't superb physical thing. It was the idea that they could set that goal and work toward that goal. So the goal Paul was talking about was the kingdom of God, but it can apply to other goals in our life. It can apply to overcoming some bad habit, some character thing that we know we have and has been plaguing us, some kind of thorn in the flesh. It can apply to going to college. It can apply to quitting smoking, or it can apply to literally running a marathon. So we all have a race. We have to ask ourselves, what's your race? What is my goal, or what should my goal be? The next component that the Bible gives us in this verse is to lay aside every weight. So what are the weights that are ensnaring you, that are keeping you from accomplishing the goal that you want to do, or that I want to do? They're probably weights of our own making, weights in the form of a way of thinking that limits us what we think we can do. Maybe we'd call them a self-limiting belief. What are we telling ourselves? What goal are we telling ourselves is something that only other people can accomplish, people who are not like us, because we can't do that. Only that other kind of person can do that. That's kind of what I thought of that particular goal of running a marathon. And in case you're wondering, I don't actually have that goal now. I might have it later. You can check with me later. Maybe wait till I'm 102, just to be on the safe side. But what is it that is holding us back? And oftentimes it's something in our own making. So I had in my mind what a stereotypical runner looks like, a athletic, trim person who, had the right genes and did a lot in high school. They were the high school jock, definitely not the high school nerd. And that's just how I thought of them as being, people not like me. And that was a weight that I had in my mind. So this is point 2, but maybe it should be point 1. If you've ever read the 7 laws of success, you know that number 1, the first law is setting the right goal. which is true. But the problem is, if you have weights that are telling you that you can't do those goals, then you're not going to set the right goal. So you have to think about what the weight is that is holding you back from those goals. John 10:10 is Jesus giving us a parable, and he says, "The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy." So who is the thief in that verse? Probably, if we would take a survey, most people would say, well, that thief is Satan. And fair enough, probably Jesus had him in mind with the verse, but sometimes Satan gets blamed for things that aren't his fault. Sometimes the stealing and the killing of our dreams and goals are something that we're just doing with no involvement from Satan. Sometimes we are our own thief, our own self-talk, convincing ourselves about what we can't do. That could have the most potential in our life to steal and kill our dreams and our future. And remember what Paul says back in Hebrews 12, run with endurance the race. It's easy to gloss over the words with endurance, right? With endurance means it's not a quick fix. It's not just, well, I've set this goal and that's all there is, I'm done, right? With endurance means probably starting small, building up, coming to grips with the fact that it will take a long time to reach our goal. Before John or Mr. Singh ran their first marathon, I guarantee that they performed hundreds of practice races and they built up and they endured discomfort and had setbacks and got hurt and recovered from it and had doubts and had physical limitations. But endurance means expecting that those obstacles are there. I mean, it's guaranteed that there will be obstacles if you set a hard goal. But we expect them rather than letting them become weights, because we know that's part of the whole process. The third point that we're given in this verse is to tap in to our cloud of witnesses, right? Tap into our cloud of witnesses. So again, witnesses, what does that word mean? It turns out that the word is martus in the Greek, and it can mean courtroom witnesses, like Miss Scarlett did it in the ballroom with the revolver. I saw her, I'm a witness. It's not really what he's talking about here. We need the context. And so if you can see that there, the first definition in this Bible dictionary is a courtroom, but look what the second definition is. It's somebody who is a spectator in a contest. And we're talking about a race, so clearly that's the definition that we're talking about. So those aren't just witnesses standing around watching us. They're certainly not witnesses there to accuse us. Rather, imagine you're running that race and they're on the sides and they're handing you the water and they're cheering you on. That's the cloud of witnesses that we're talking about. So this is Hebrews 12:1 that we've been looking at that time. So who are the particular witnesses that are being referred to? Well, Hebrews 12:1 is one verse away from Hebrews 11, which is the faith chapter. And what is all the things in the faith chapter? It's talking about all of those people who have been faithful in the past. All right, it talked about Abel, Enoch, Noah, all the things that they did, Abraham and Sarah. So basically, the author of Hebrews is saying, these are our cloud of witnesses. They ran that race and they're done, and now they're cheering us on as we do our race. I'm not trying to change any kind of doctrine of heaven and saying they're like literally looking down and cheering us on, but I think you know what I mean. They've run the race and they are examples. And so the Bible is saying these are the examples. They've blazed the trail, and now it's your turn. One challenge with witnesses or with peer groups is we tend to associate with people that we think are like us. And if we don't think the people are like us, we don't we don't talk to them so much, or we think of them as other kind of people and we're over here. Just like I thought of marathon runners. I thought they were a totally different kind of person, which they're not. And so the Bible is trying to say those are not different kinds of people just because they're famous and they're written in the Bible, right? They're people who God called and said, this is my way, and those people followed along God's way, right? And we can do the same thing. There's nothing special, magic about Abel or Enoch. They were called as we are, and they followed, and we have the same opportunity that they did. Now, one disadvantage of the witnesses that are mentioned in Hebrews 11 is that they have completed the race, but they're dead. They're waiting their resurrection. They can't literally be with us, cheering us on and encouraging us. But they are not the only cloud of witnesses that we have, right? We're here in a congregation. We're not on our own. So this is our cloud of witnesses, right? We're cheering each other on. We're handing the water. We're clapping, and we're actually running in the race together, which a lot of people do. They run together, and they help each other, and they encourage each other. So we are our own cloud of witnesses. And this is true spiritually and physically. There are clouds of witness all the time. We don't think of as clouds of witnesses, but the peer group or the support group that we're in, that's a cloud of witnesses, right? My runners club is a cloud of witnesses, or people who go to Alcoholics Anonymous, that's a cloud of witnesses. They're trying to encourage each other to be sober and remain sober. Or if you're an aspiring novelist and you want to write books, you get together with other people, aspiring authors, and you encourage each other and read each other's stuff, right? That's a group. That's your cloud of witnesses. I have my cloud of witnesses. Some of them are in this room that we've run some things together. And if it weren't for that, I probably wouldn't be on the path that I'm on. Now, you have to watch out because friends sometimes are not your cloud of witnesses. Sometimes they're the opposite. Sometimes they hold you back, or they're into bad stuff, or they're convinced that life isn't fair and things aren't going to work, or who knows, maybe they even use drugs or something, and maybe they have the attitude, if you're trying to improve and get better, that, well, what are you doing? You think you're better than us? Well, you might need to examine your cloud of witnesses and ask if they're the right group. But ultimately, the cloud of witnesses is there to encourage us in whatever we do, and especially in the ultimate goal of striving toward the kingdom of God. So, brethren, God did not set us up to fail. He set us up to succeed. He gave us everything that we need to succeed. So go out there and run the race.